Hi everybody, welcome back to episode 2 of Cog Vlog. Today we're going to be sitting on the floor. You should all come down here with me. I want to talk about one of the important isms that helps form the historical and philosophical foundation of cognitive science. For today's video, I've chosen behaviorism. We're going to talk about what behaviorism means. I'd like to summarize some of the main arguments for and against it. I hope you don't mind if I keep this pretty informal. I just really want to take our vlogging relationship to the next level. You can call me Bob, and I'll call you Arthur Wilson #1 through infinity.
Just to avoid confusion.
So what the heck is behaviorism? Behaviorism, according to some stuffy old book, is the idea that in order to study the activities of the mind empirically with scientific rigor, we must restrict our observations and inquiries solely to the physical manifestations of the presumed psychical phenomena. In other words, it's okay to judge a stuffy old book by its cover if you can't fucking read it. There are more or less radical versions of this notion, some going so far as to deny the relevance of mind or psyche, or even thought itself. Let's think about that for a second. So, you've probably heard of psychology. If so, then you're probably already familiar with important psychologists Freud and Pavlov. Freud is famous for his work on psychoanalysis and dream interpretation, whereas Pavlov is remembered somewhat less romantically for his work on classical conditioning and drooling dogs. Behaviorism builds on these ideas and really takes them in new directions. Early behaviorists such as J.B. Watson and B.F. Skinner were frustrated by the lack of hard data and reliable predictions from the older, more introspective methodologies of psychology. Were J.B. and B.F. BFFs? They reasoned that subjective experience had no real relevance in modern science. I mean, what good is a thought or feeling to others if, by definition, that thought or feeling is completely personal and unknowable to those others? Let's consider Watson's famous example of the golfer. If you study a golfer's behavior, then you can know all there is to know about golf. So too with mental states. By observing the physiological effects of presumed cognition, one could, in theory, predict reactions from given stimuli, or stimuli from given reactions. Some would argue that golf is far too complex to learn from just watching a golfer. But Watson argued that by consistently and accurately observing a golfer's actions, you could easily reconstruct an understanding of the game and its rules. What we still don't know is why anyone gives a shit about golf.
Get off of me!
It's boring. This rather strict approach had its ideological roots in the logical positivism of Auguste Comte. Methodologically, behaviorism relied on physical and chemical reactions to explain psychological phenomena. Under this concept, the actions of the subject are synonymous with their intentions, rather like interpretive dance. No, I'm not doing that. What that means is that what one means to do is done. Therefore, by observing what you do, we can know what you meant. What could be more rational than that? This system claimed to resolve the age-old mind-body problem that had kept psychologists beside themselves with frustration. The mind, so far as a behaviorist is concerned, is the body, and vice versa. By simply recording subtle gestures or automatic behaviors, such as subvocal contractions or furrowing of the brow, one could infer the cognitive processes of the subject. This may seem extreme. But the insistence on physical phenomena is a small price to pay to overcome the accumulated incrustations of introspective superstition that sullied psychology's reputation as a natural science. Behaviorists have been accused of abandoning or ignoring such intuitively fundamental concepts as the mind or thought. But they simply shrugged their shoulders and said chemists abandoned alchemy, physicists abandoned the hand of God and then found it again, and Beyonce abandoned Destiny's Child. Some might argue that while empirical reasoning is not intrinsically bad or harmful, the belief that it is the only reliable guiding principle is not only demonstrably false, but utterly ridiculous. The moderate success of classical physics has left an indelible stamp on scientific reasoning. Since those heady days of Isaac Newton, scientists have scrambled to legitimize their disciplines with concrete data and statistical modeling. To these critics, so-called ontological naturalism, like the lucky jockstraps of pro athletes, has imposed an admirable but uncomfortable restraint onto the most probing human organ. I'm talking about your brains. The hard line of behaviorism shouldn't be taken to mean that behaviorists were necessarily materialists or reductionists. They just couldn't be bothered with any hypothesis that lacked any real predictive power. To their way of thinking, they were following the law of parsimony, basically trusting in Mother Nature to just keep it simple. That's really all I have for today on Cog Vlog. Subscribe below. Logical positivism.